How many of you have heard about blockchain? It's a term that you hear quite often anymore, and there are many different definitions for it. Most often we hear it in conjunction with Bitcoin, and if you have any Bitcoins, you're probably doing pretty well financially. So what is blockchain? Well, blockchain is really the technology that was behind Bitcoin when it first started. Simply, it's a shared immutable ledger for recording the history of transactions, and it can't be altered. So that's where we get the truth. Don and Alex Tapascott, authors of Blockchain Revolution, view blockchain as an incorruptible digital ledger of economic transactions that can be programmed to record not just financial transactions, but virtually everything of value. And at first it was financial transactions, but now we're trying to find different ways to use blockchain technology without having to tie it to the currency that Bitcoin brings. So there are three elements of the blockchain technology. There are blocks that you can see in the blue there. Those are records of transactions. And there are chains. Chains are just a series of transactions or a series of blocks. And then there are the networks that, of course, you need in order to carry this out. And those networks can be centralized or decentralized. So a chain is just a collection of blocks linked together, and they're linked together by hashes, unique digital signatures generated cryptographically. That they tie the blocks together and they verify that the previous block was accurate so that now you could build upon it. So how does blockchain work? Well, it removes the middleman. So that could be your bank, for example, or it could be a real estate agent if you wanted it to be. What it does is look at the business transaction and bring together the seller and the buyer, or bring together the person that's initiating the transaction with the person that will be the final outcome or receive the final outcome of it. So we want to look for benefits that are not necessarily financial. There are four principles of the blockchain network that demonstrate the reasons transactions conducted using blockchain can be trusted. That's the whole point. We're talking about truth in transactions. If you know, there were a lot of problems with the financial market and real estate in the past, and people were losing their homes. In some cases, they couldn't find record of the transactions. They couldn't find records of their mortgages. If blockchain had been used at the time, there would have been that trusted chain of all of those transactions that nobody would have said was incorrect. They would be able to verify that each step along the way was accurate. So blockchain network then provides distributed access. All people within this centralized or decentralized network have a copy of the blockchain. And it's public. All the actors in the blockchain transactions are hidden, but everybody sees all the transactions. So public doesn't mean they see you, but they see the transactions. Time-stamped and persistent. Now, this is a chart that explains blockchain, and it may be a little difficult to read, but take your time to check it out later. But I can tell you the steps to it are fairly simple when you're saying them, not so simple when they're happening behind the scenes. But someone requests a transaction, the transaction is broadcasted to a peer-to-peer network consisting of a lot of computers known as nodes, and the network of nodes validate the transactions. If the transactions are verified, and they could be cryptography or cryptocurrency, they could be contracts, records, other information, but once they're verified, they're combined into this chain. That is the ledger that proves that this transaction was valid. It verifies it, and then completes the transaction. So measuring the truth, how does that happen? Well, with blockchain technologies, truth can be measured by the fact that everyone in the network agrees that this is true. So it's an immutable digital record that is considered by everyone involved in the transactions as a single source of truth. So how can blockchain change the world? Can it really? We're seeing many ideas for applications. So far, besides the financial use, Bitcoin, we're not seeing transactions that have proven themselves yet. We're seeing pilots, we're seeing beginnings of application of blockchain in different types of situations. For example, recording land titles so that citizens can defend their property rights. That would be very important. A way to trade physical goods can be proven through blockchain technology. You could use them for loyalty points. If any of you have loyalty points as customers, a blockchain can be applied to that type of process. So there are many ways that we're hoping it can be used. In my field, we want it to be able to verify records. When we talk about truth and we involve now transactions on the internet, so many different things can happen, as you heard with the presentation about fake news. Well, how do we know that the transaction is really true and accurate? And we think blockchain technology will be able to be applied to records management and to archival environments so that we can prove that something is authentic. So there is one caution, though. There's a cost to this. It's expensive. It's not cheap. And so someone does have to pay for it. What the organizations that are now looking at a way to get onto the bandwagon need to think about, is this really a way that we should go? I've got a few examples here of blockchain applied. For example, in San Francisco, a chain is developing software tools to create apps so that they can transmit almost anything. In London, we've got Everledger that is working on this. In Texas, we've got a startup that is actually doing some work for the government. And in Zurich, there's a trend that's using blockchain to trade goods and services. So these are some of the applications that are starting to get in the news that we can follow and hopefully learn more about the application. But as I said, blockchain may not always be the best choice. So you talked about Elise having a database, and in some cases databases are all you need in order to keep track of information and transactions. But if you're seeking trust and immutability, blockchain solution is what you want. If all you want is confidentiality and performance, then the database may be for you. Yes, Val, everybody around the world is trying to get on the blockchain bandwagon. If you do a trend chart, Google Trends, for example, you'll see where all of the discussions are taking place and the activity taking place around it. So next year, probably some really fantastic things to talk about the application of blockchain outside of the financial world. But this year, we're just starting to think about it.